Thanks, John. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 12th River Falls City Council. I always want to say Planning Commission. River Falls Council meeting. First thing we do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Christy, if you can roll call, please.
Bierstead.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Downey.
Here.
Morset.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Odine.
Here.
Plunkett.
Here.
Okay, next we have approval of the minutes from the March 22nd meeting.
I move approval. Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Second, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
you just asked for the regular meeting. You didn't mention the closed session. You should
Oh,
probably,
I'm sorry.
I would amend
Regular
my
meet- yep.
movement to include the closed session.
Second.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. First and second on the minute meetings and the closed session minutes. All in favor? Approval of the bills with Mrs. Mueller.
I make a motion to approve the bills in the amount of $2,583,717.77, subject to the comptroller.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I apologize about that. I called you people. I'm reading. It says, it's Miller. So sorry. Off to a resounding start tonight. Sorry, folks. Okay, next move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to talk to, now would be the time.
Mr. Mayor, I have a public comment. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank the city for the field trip to the tour to the closest Class A biosolids plants. That would be similar to what we would be building here in River Falls. The Class A biosolids plant was located in Wisconsin Dells. I was able to go along with city staff and utility advisory board this last Thursday. We asked a lot of detailed questions. It confirmed our discussions we had in our city workshops and our utility advisory board. It would save a lot of money considerably. It is much more efficient with its use of technology. A Class A biosolids plant like this takes away any stress that comes with a Class B biosolids plant and the continuing relationship we have with one. The product is dry, and because of that process, that reduces a lot of redundancy. It is almost odor-free. They have an odor scrubber, which takes care of any odor there is. They have no complaints in the community with odor. It was good to go there in person and see what impacts on our community if we were to build our own. The part that impressed me the most was that it was remarkably clean. I only have positive things to say about moving forward with this project. It also opens up space with our public works if we were to go forward with that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. First thing on the agenda is resolution approving city prosecutor services. This would approve the agreement with Backhoe Norman for services for the municipal court. Next is a resolution referring the annexation petition for the Thompson property to the Planning Commission. Next is a resolution approving the purchase of a 2022 John Deere tractor. That would be for the price of $146,499 from Midwest Machinery. Next one is a resolution approving the purchase of a 2022 John Deere tractor backhoe. That would be for $118,277 from McCoy Construction and Forestry. Does anybody want to pull anything?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
First and second, questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to resolution approving the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA plan. This resolution approved the city administrator's recommended spending plan for ARPA funds. I'll take a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion. We approve the resolution for the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA plan.
Second.
Okay, first and a second, questions or comments? Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple comments. I had recommended the use of a transportation utility fee because it saves money, it is fiscally responsible, and brings down costs while prioritizing your city's transportation needs in a fair and responsible manner. A transportation utility fee keeps life affordable. It is, in my opinion, that the best modern planning tool available to cities at the moment. Somebody at the state of the city said most of our homeowners in River Falls saw a tax reduction in property taxes, and what do you attribute to making them remain lower? If I recall, Mr. Simpson said, we did that by having a levy where the total amount of spending was in line with new growth. That is how we were able to balance the city's needs. My answer to maintaining responsible growth and doing that in the future and having the improvements for transportation is we created transportation utility fee. It is specifically structured and designed to save money through dynamic planning and direct implementation where we responsibly phase in our transportation needs with a responsibly structured fee which reduces taxes. This brings down overall taxes and spending in the most responsible way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have one more part of discussion I'd like to bring up. And that is, when we vote on the ARPA funding tonight, that's kind of like what you'd call the end of the discussion. I do think that we should consider leaving some funds available for a potential ice rink. There is a need in our community for it, but I also understand the difficulty of getting to that. We should allow our community chances to find partners, whether it's local banks, different groups, to bring in some of that money first and grants that we can apply to the state. I know that I'm asking for a need that is prioritized in a manner where we would have done it a long time ago, but we did not have funds. It's been 10 years of waiting for to get an ice rink just for the community for ice skating. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not suggesting we spend all the money from ARPA as far as like the total cost would be. I think we owe it to ourselves to do the due diligence and raise that with our community first. But if we can't get the rest of those funds, we would fill the rest in with ARPA. That's, I think, a responsible way. So waiting 5 years, I don't think is acceptable. But I think we could do it in 2. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. So with that, I make a motion that we set appropriate funds aside from ARPA to include a future skating rink in Glen Park, including the Glen Park design plan. So it'd be in 2 years, not 5.
Can I ask for a clarification on your motion?
Yeah.
What is the dollar amount and which line are you taking it from?
So the ice rink alone is $50,000. I'm not entirely sure because I don't have a dollar and cents on the warming house. Mr. Simpson, could you provide some of those?
I don't think I can give you an accurate estimate on the warming house because we haven't done significant research on that. We did some, as you know, we did some quick research for you on like a bare bones rink, and our best estimate currently is $50,000 to $60,000, which probably doesn't include any dashboards and other things like that. It's basically giving you some kind of surface to skate on. So that's
Or upkeep, or
right. And we
right.
didn't do any analysis on operating costs or anything like that.
And I believe a lot of those additional things can be given by the community. But I think it'd be wise to actually have some ARPA funds available to balance it. So I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Plunkett.
I think we're in the middle of a comp plan right now. We're doing our comp plan with Park and Rec as part of that. I think that's where this should be. If Park and Rec likes that ideal, they can carry that forward through the comp plan. I think we need to figure out what they're gonna do first before we start doing stuff like this.
So could we put some money aside through ARPA and then let the park board figure out if they think that's acceptable then? So would it be appropriate to let the park board have that discussion?
I will second the motion for Councilmember Downing.
Well, thank you.
So we're open for discussion. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that our use of ARPA funds is going to do is to free up money going forward. And I see the ice rink as something that merits a longer discussion, more detailed plans, perhaps, an outreach plan. You're right, it's been discussed for a while, but I think I don't see that as necessary connected to ARPA, although ARPA may make what you want possible, I think. So I would not vote in favor of your amendment just because we don't have enough, in terms of the amount of money, and it would upset what I see as a good balance that we have in the plan in front of us.
Mr. Mayor. Yep. I've been a pretty ardent supporter of a warming house and a skating rink at Glen Park since we did the park plan. And so I really would like to see it done, but I tend to agree with Ms. Odine. I think we've got the comp plan, we've got the park and pedestrian plan, and I think in that plan, they will give us the time to flesh that out. And then as Ms. Odine pointed out, the ARPA funds are gonna allow us some spending, some ability down the road, and I think those two will intersect in a year or two, or that's my hope, along with you, I'm sure, Mr. Downing. So I guess I'd prefer to see us not carve out any ARPA funds. The other, I think a comment was made at the State of the City that there was a certain council member who said a pot of money in search of a project is a bad fiscal policy, and that happened to have been me. This sounds a little bit like that, but I do support the long-term goal of getting a skating rink. The Rotary group I belong to, we looked at it, we thought about that project as one of our major projects. This was a couple years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 now. The warming house was about $240,000 on a very, very thumbnail sketch of a budget. So I guess what I'd like to see us do is get that into the park and ped plan, and put some focus on it there, because that's where these things will come out. So that's my position.
Oh, yep. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question for Mr. Downing on this. It's my understanding that your intent with this is to ensure that this actually gets done, unlike the promises of action that have not materialized for a significant period of time. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's been 10 years that we've not had a skating rink for our community. 10 years is too long. You know, waiting another 5, you're gonna have an upset community not able to use an underutilized park in the winter. And I think the ARPA funds are given to us so we can have amenities that are tangible. This is a tangible amenity for the community that they get to enjoy. Thank you for your question.
And then some further clarification on that. And this may be actually directed for Mr. Simpson. So essentially, if there is a portion of this money earmarked for a warming house or an ice rink, because we already have a storm shelter in Glen Park, it's actually pretty nice, might function for people to come in and use. I mean, I'm all for a little bit of efficiency here. We built the building, we might want to use it in the winter. But I digress. Mr. Simpson, so if we earmarked those funds for a warming house, we would lose them if no action was taken to actually use those funds. Is that correct?
Staff would endeavor to make sure you don't lose those, but that is a possibility. I mean, if you're directing staff, I mean, I would tell you how I understand the resolution to be constructed is I'm trying to make sure there's clear communication. You are giving the city administrator the authority to spend the ARPA money. And if every dollar doesn't match exactly to the memo, you're giving me the ability to do that. But we're trying to avoid any confusion about what the direction of the council is. So you could pass this resolution with an amendment, which would give me the understanding that I need to set aside some money, then that would trigger us figuring out what the priorities are. You also have the ability as a council to just set that. I mean, you can say with specificity, the motion is for setting aside $40,000 for this project, and I want you to not spend money on Collins Park Trail reconstruction out of ARPA. So that's up to the council. I don't get the sense that's the direction you're headed as a council, but certainly I would want to know about the ice rink because that is not a recommendation from staff. at this time, but that's certainly within the prerogative of the council to do that. Just like you can, if there's anything on this, we've tried to outline it in some specificity so that if there's things you object to ARPA money being spent on, that you can not have us spend ARPA money on it. In most cases, there would be some other funding source, including tax levy, but it may not occur now. It might occur later, and there still would be opportunity then for the council to kind of say no to that stuff in later budgets or as it comes up. So, did I answer your question? I think if you direct us to set a first of all, I'd ask you to identify an amount. That'd be more helpful than a general motion. But second of all, if we do set that amount, we'll be watching the clock, the federal clock, to make sure that if we haven't figured out how to spend it on the ice rink, that we bring something forward to you that makes sure it's eligible expense for ARPA, because we don't want to lose any of the ARPA dollars. But it is a possibility that you could.
And so essentially, by my understanding then, instead of having another 10-year period with no action, Mr. Downing's amendment would direct the city, as is council's prerogative, to do things in the public interest with the ARPA funds. Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Downing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I still think this is something that needs to go through Park and Rec and the comp plan. And I apologize, I wasn't here for when you guys had the workshop on this. There's a couple other things in there I don't want to drag this on, but there's a few things in there. You know, my biggest.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we have an amendment on the table.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm trying
Okay.
to, talking about that. I realize that. Well, let's actually, before I go on, let's, any more questions for Sean?
I just have a comment on it. So I understand where Councilmember Downing's coming from on this. So, I think the rink is overdue. I think it's at 10 years. We're gonna be looking at 15 years if nothing changes tonight. I take my kids to skate at the UWRF rink. We don't play hockey in my house. That's just not what we do. So anyway, that being said, it is a need because you can barely get ice time at the university. It is just overwhelming. And as I think everyone on the council knows, and maybe community knows, at this time, the ice rink time is taken up very much by the Hockey Association, which is their prerogative because it's their building. And so we do have a need here. And I think we actually had this, if I'm not wrong, I think this is a 2015 planning process, had an ice rink on and they got pulled. And so I think the intention probably coming from, I won't speak for Councilmember Downing, at least from my support of this discussion, is we need to get this out front. If you're a community partner, I think we need to be talking about some things down the road. We currently have a gymnastics center that has naming rights. We have a bank ballpark that has some naming rights. So maybe that's another piece of this, is to look at some public-private in terms of partnership and funding. So hopefully we can minimize some of the costs to the city, because I think there's a need there. The prior ice rink, as you all know, for those of you who've been around for a while, probably was underutilized. I recall playing broom ball on it like twice in my life in like 1999, 2000 era. And that was back before Triangles Park was around. So I think there is a need. So regardless of how we make this discussion, I think we need to put a little bit more weight and momentum and drive towards having an ice rink in the future. And I appreciate our city's process. I appreciate our planning. For the administrator all down, we're always doing a good job of planning ahead and then working the plan and funding the plan. And so I think that's wonderful. But I also appreciate Councilmember Downing here trying to just bring this up for discussion and make sure that as we look at this federal money, which is meant to be a stimulus towards the economy and towards public-facing projects, I love $188,000 for police vehicles, but that's not something that necessarily our community sees. I will note too, we have $106,000 for park equipment. That will be exciting for a lot of families in town. But then there's some other costs, which, I know Mike is gonna be happy about the public works facility, but that's not gonna get everyone excited, right? So I just think we need to keep focus on public facing projects as well, because that's partly what we're here for. And it's partly what Congress actually asked us to do in this as well, in terms of crafting out this legislation. So just thank you for the whole discussion. Appreciate it.
Okay, I just want to add that I think the money would be better spent if we want to put money aside for this amount of money or any amount of money, would be all of a sudden we have 2,000 ash trees we have to take down. We didn't see that coming. We don't have money put aside for that. That's going to be 200 grand a year to do that, around that. Some of the ARPA money would be great for that. I mean, we have some things in here that we really, like I said, this project, the ice rink, that can wait till we get through take it through Park and Rec. We can find the money for that if the council wants to do this, if the Park and Rec wants to do this. There's a couple other things in there. You had bring up the transportation utility. I don't even know if that's in the middle of the court right now. So that's gonna be a couple years before that even gets figured out, if we can legally do that, right?
I know the answer to that. The answer is, it's only in court because they're asking if it can stack with other funding. We already have fees that do, so it's not even a question. That's just political posturing. So yeah,
Okay,
that'll pass.
there again.
But, you know, with the trees, we actually do have a plan for that. And Mike Noreen's, you know, he's the one who
No,
runs it.
I know we have a plan. I'm saying it's the money.
Right, but this,
This would be a great way to, this is free money, but it's not, I
Not free
don't mean
money.
free money. I don't mean that. I mean, it's money we're unexpected for us. Trees, these tree issues is unexpected for us. They kind of mate together. So I'm just making a suggestion. We've got a huge problem in the city right now. This could be, and this is forward facing, like Mr. Carroll said. This is something the city will see and, you know, appreciate. But that's just my thought. That's how I think we should go along, but that's my opinion. Anyway, so moving on.
Mr.
Anybody
Mayor.
else have any on this amendment? Oh, yep. Scott, if you wanna,
You
is there anything you can?
you're not required to, but I would suggest that you consider a friendly amendment to identify a dollar amount.
Okay.
To help staff understand better what the scope of this project you think is.
I make a motion to a
Wait,
friendly
wait.
amendment.
Okay, say there's already amendment.
I make a friendly amendment to ask the city to set aside $100,000 for the ice rink, for the city ice rink.
second.
First and a second for $100,000 amendment on the ice rink. Go ahead, discussion.
Where are we taking it from?
Yeah,
We
gotta take something off the
take it
ARPA.
out of somewhere.
I would ask that the city staff make that decision, give them the freedom to make that decision, because they're the ones that put together the ARPA funding proposal, so they're the ones that know the triage level of needs better than we do.
I guess I would respectfully request that you pick one. That's sort of putting the city staff in a position that they have to make a decision that should be made at this level.
Yeah, and the city staff made a proposal, but we discussed it as a council and gave our support to it. So I think it's incumbent on us to at least give some direction on that.
Where you want it from?
I'm not gonna make that motion. If someone else would like to, they can. I think the city staff can do it.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing is we can raise some of that money through community grants, which means there'll be money that we most likely will end up saving too. But it's not gonna be 15 or 20 more years of not having an ice rink. That's unacceptable.
Any other questions or comments? So we got an amendment to the original to put aside $100,000 for an ice rink.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick comment. So I guess looking at table 3, for those of us who are looking at page 3 of the memorandum to the mayor and city council, you know, we essentially have 10 line items broken down there. So if we're looking at $100,000, you know, we can kind of do the math there, just because I have to assume that the city came in with good estimates, but they are estimates and there's probably some wiggle to go to Councilmember Mueller's point about making sure that there is a little wiggle there. So I feel as though it's feasible, but that's just my thought.
It's feasible for staff to get rid of it or come up with 100,000?
Correct.
That's the motion for this.
Pardon me?
I said that's the motion for this.
Yep, yep, we got a first and a second. All in favor of the motion, the amendment to the motion, the original motion?
Aye.
It was a friendly, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was accepted,
Oh, I'm sorry.
incorporated into.
It was
So-
accepted into the,
Can we ask for a roll call vote?
Yeah, we're gonna need a roll call vote on this
Yeah.
one.
So if I may, so what you're voting, what I understand you'd be voting on, and Christy can make sure if that's what she thinks too, since she's recording it. You're voting on an amendment to the resolution that's in the packet. So this is the amendment.
yes.
Modify the resolution to set aside $100,000 of expenditure from the ARPA funds for ice rink.
With
And,
your-
and it would give the stat, by extension, because of the way the original resolution's written, it would give me, the city administrator, the authority to figure where that comes from. Unless you have further amendments tonight, which you can make to give me other direction. And I don't mean that sarcastically, even though it probably sounded that way. Does that clarify what you're voting on? Okay.
So, Chris, you can have a roll call, please? Is there anything else? We have a roll call, please?
Start with Alderperson O'Dean.
No.
Downing.
Aye.
Morset.
No.
Miller.
Aye.
Carroll.
Aye.
Bierstead.
No.
Plunkett.
Aye.
4-3.
Okay, so now we're back to the original resolution. And I have a first and a second on that. Is there any other discussion on the rest of it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor. So I would like to remind the council that you provided me the authority to make the prioritization.
Yep.
So I would request that you don't make individual requests to the city administrator on what things do not get cut from the list. That would be done by you as a group, not as individuals.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, next move on to administrator's report. Scott, if you have anything for us?
Thanks, council. Well, we're excited to get started on the investment of the ARPA funds in the community, and we'll do that with all reasonable speed to do so. So thanks for the direction. The reminder, the organizational meeting is April 19th at 6:30. We understand that the April 22nd to 24th Bluegrass Bourbon and Brews Fest is a sold out success. So we expect a lot of visitors that at those dates into the community, and we'll welcome them in. Excuse me, the electronics recycling event for all customers of River Falls Municipal Utilities is happening April 23rd. That's 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Public Works Garage on Benson Street. Just an example of items that would be included would be, make sure I read this correctly, which ones are and not the ones that aren't. Ballast, batteries, cables and wires, cell phones, computers, dehumidifiers, holiday lights, etc. So those would be the kind of electronic recyclables that you can bring. There also is going to be an area, and this is a new thing, for free cycle. So there'll be an area where you can bring working electronics that you're willing someone else to take, as long as you're not offended that if it's not taken, it goes in the recycling pile at the end of the day. So if you have that 8-track tape player or something that you think somebody might be looking for, you're welcome to do that. And we'll see, we're not really sure exactly how that's gonna work, but we're gonna try a little bit, and hopefully the volume is something we can handle. Earth Fest is on April 24th. That's 2 to 5 p.m. at the Glen Park Pavilion. And that event, there's more information on that event on a variety of sources, but one is at the Hope for Creation RF.org, which is HOPE, the number 4, creation RF.org for more information. I also believe we've got information on the city's website. A number of the other partners have information on that event. We'll be having an open house retirement party for Fire Chief Scott Nelson on April 26th, 3 to 5. That's in the training room here at City Hall. There's a number of events going on at the library. We want to thank city staff for organizing. They had a silent auction for Relay for Life, and city employees We had a good turnout for that and raised over $3,000 for the relay. I certainly want to thank directly the city clerk, Amy White, and all the election staff. We had a very smooth election by all accounts on April 5th. So really hats off to them. There's always minor changes to just about every election based on direction from courts, from other guiders of elections through the state. So appreciate just their nimbleness to make sure that people can we can conduct a successful election, maintain that ability for folks. So with that, I guess I'll take any other questions you might have. I want to thank Councilmember Plunkett for his service and all the folks that put their names on the ballot. I know it's a lot tougher being elected than appointed, so I'll stay where I'm at and you guys can do your thing.
We appreciate you doing it. Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Junk now.